Salam and hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Psychcast, where we'll be discussing about psychology, mental health and self-growth. And in today's episode, kita ada bersama dengan kita, Sarah Aleesa.
Hi everyone. So let me just introduce myself then.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So before that, how are
Okay,
you
sorry.
doing?
I am fine. I'm just a bit nervous
Nervous.
and awkward. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, let's try to warm up
Tak
first.
ada audience, nervous juga lah.
Nervous lah,
Okay.
nervous lah. Clinical Psych always get nervous.
Yeah. Alright, please introduce yourself.
Okay, so I'm Sarah Aleesa. I'm a clinical psychologist. I work as a trainer as well. Okay, in a few different companies. I'm an alumni for UKM, which I'm very proud of. Okay, because now you guys are my junior,
Super
right?
junior.
Super junior. But yeah, I'm very grateful for this session. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah. Alright. Okay, without further ado, let's talk about what we're going to talk about today, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to talk about the big theme is about clinical psychology.
Right.
Since you are a practice clinical psychologist now, right?
Yep.
We're going to talk about how your journey as a clinical psychologist.
Mm-hmm.
So moving on to the first question, what made you want to pursue psychology? Typical question.
Yeah, typical question,
Yeah.
but always give me something to reflect on, right?
Yeah.
So
When was your first year in degree? Yeah.
So yeah, I studied bachelor degrees of
Mhm.
psychology in UKM
Mhm.
when I was in 2000. Let me check. Let me try to remember.
16 is it?
2015.
15.
It was 2015. Yeah, that was during my first year.
Okay.
So back then, I wasn't interested about psychology. You know, I don't know. I have zero knowledge about psychology. So my interest is more into law.
Okay.
Then I was offered for law course at that time. No, I wasn't offered for law course. I was offered for psychology course. So in order for me to change course, I need to at least attend one semester of psychology, right?
Oh.
So I took the challenge. Like I said, oh, why not, right? It's just one semester.
Yeah.
So during the first semester, I fell in love with psychology. You know, I learned about human behavior. I learned about people, personality, and
Yeah.
everything. So that's what makes me want to learn more about psychology.
Mm-hmm.
But fast forward into 2020 when we had our first pandemic,
Mhm.
COVID pandemic. You know, I was an HR before. I was a trainer before, right?
Mm-hmm.
I decided to pursue my master's in clinical psychology after I've observed that most of my surroundings, they started to develop this kind of mental health disorders, you know, like depressions, you know, the COVID made people got anxious, easily
Yeah.
anxious. Some of them, they got
Social anxiety.
yeah,
and
social
whatnot, right?
anxiety, like develop this OCD because you
Mhm.
need to keep yourself clean, right? So
Yeah.
they have to wash their hands so many times.
Yeah.
So that's when I realized that I wanted to become a clinical psychologist and I want to help these people. Yeah.
So before you even got into clinical psychology course, you were an HR.
Right.
Right.
Yes, because my interest before when I first learned psychology
Uh-huh.
was focusing more into industry and organization psychology, which is IO.
IO.
Yeah, that's when I went into corporate. You know, I help people, the employees, how to boost their motivation, their emotional management.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about what is clinical psychology basically.
Right. Yeah, so clinical psychologist is a branch under psychology, yeah,
Mhm.
that focusing more into mental health disorders, right? We study about this, you know, DSM-5,
Yeah,
right? What we
DSM-5.
call diagnostic statistics of mental health
Statistics, yeah.
disorders. So, yeah, we help people who developed, who are facing, and who are struggling with
Yeah.
their mental health issues. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's what clinical psychology
So
is.
that's a basic definition or
Yes.
meaning of clinical psychology,
Yes.
right? Alright, so moving on to the next question. This is quite a typical question most people might ask us as a psychology students, right? We get this a lot. People will always confuse between clinical psychologists, counselor, therapies, and as well as psychiatrist.
Right.
So what is the difference between this all?
Right. So let me maybe just explain to you one by one,
Yeah,
right? So as I mentioned before just now, clinical psychologist is a branch or a niche that focusing into mental health disorders, right? So when you learn about clinical psychology, you learn specifically and focusing on the DSM-5, whereby this is DSM-5 shows about the criteria of mental health disorders, about the symptoms of mental health disorders, right? So we study about that DSM-5. Moreover, we also study about how can we conduct the assessments, the screening of mental health disorders, right? For example, when people say, "Oh, I have depression," we can't just say you have depression. We have to measure it. We have to screen for it, right? So we do study about the assessments, how to conduct these assessments in terms maybe, like personality assessment, behavior assessment, emotional assessment, intellectual assessments. So we learn about all those assessments, right? So that is clinical psychology. On top of that, we also learn how to conduct a therapy. Yeah, we do psychoeducation, psychotherapy. We help people, with their intervention, their treatment plan on how can they, navigate their psychological distress. So that's what clinical psychology is.
Okay.
On the opposite, as a counselor, right, they don't really do clinical assessments, like I mentioned just now, the personality assessment, behavior assessments, because they are focusing more into the counseling session. Yes, on how they can help these clients, these patients to handle their struggles, right? And also they are focusing more into career situations, when someone is having a career dilemma about what they should do, about their strength, normally they will go to a counseling session. Right? On the other hand, psychiatrists, right, they study almost the same like clinical psychologists, but another advantage that they have is that they can prescribe medications. Some mental health disorders need to be added with medications for you to, live as typical, live like with focusing, you can focus even more better. So you need medications. So they study this medical. On top of that, they study about psychiatry, right? So the obvious difference between clinical psychologists and psychiatrists is that psychiatrists, they can prescribe medications, but clinical psychologists and counselor cannot. Okay?
All right.
And another one is that therapists. Yes. So therapists is almost the same like counselor, right? They do psychotherapy. Maybe they do some screening, basic screening.
Oh yeah, wait beforehand. Let's specify the word therapist,
right?
Because like therapist itself is a general practitioner.
Yes.
So let's talk about mental health therapists.
Right.
Perhaps, yeah.
Yes, mental health therapists. Okay. So mental health therapists, usually, based on my experience, when I conduct these sessions, these psychotherapy sessions, right?
Okay.
These clients, these patients, they always call us as their therapists. They don't call us as their psychologists or clinical psychologists or counselors. No, they don't.
Okay.
They usually call us as the therapists, right?
Okay.
So I would say that mental health therapists can be a clinical psychologist, can be a counselor, or can be a psychiatrist as well, right? But if you're talking about mental health therapists, again, almost similar to clinical psychologists, they can do psychotherapy, but they cannot prescribe medications. They are focusing more onto the psychotherapy.
I see.
Do you see any difference there?
Yeah, I could see that. So, correct me if I'm wrong. So the difference between the obvious difference between psychiatrists, psychologists, and counselor and therapists, the difference is just psychiatrists can prescribe medication, psychologists cannot, but they can do assessment.
Right.
And counselor, let's put it this way. counselor help people with typical problems,
Right.
right? Help normal people,
Yes.
but psychologists and psychiatrists help people with abnormalities.
Yes, that's
Right.
correct.
Alright.
Right.
Okay, now I got it. Alright. What about alright, being a clinical psychologist, right? Do you think it is a tough career for you, or what is it like to be a clinical
Clinical
psychologist? Yeah.
Yeah. That is a very deep one, very deep question, because for me personally, to be honest, it is a tough career.
Yeah.
You know, let me just share with you about my journey and to become a clinical psychologist,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
So I started to study. I started my master when I was in 23 years old. When I was 23, 24 years old, right? 25 years old. Sorry, when I was in 25 years old, that was in 2020.
2020.
Right. So a week before my class started, I found out that I was pregnant. Right. So I was having this dilemma whether I should proceed with this master or not, because I don't know how it's going to be. Right. But then I got the support from my family, from my friends. You know, maybe you should just try. Then I said, okay, let me just try. So 3 months into this clinical psychology classes, it was a very, very hard journey for me because of the morning sickness, because of the online classes, because of the hormones, the mood swings and everything.
Yeah.
And I decided to quit, you know. It was like 3 months, 3 months into becoming this clinical psychology students. So, but then I got the support, like I mentioned. They always push me to be better, you know, just maybe, you know, this will pass. That's it. This will pass, because maybe it's because of the hormones, they said. So, and from my reading, usually the first trimester of pregnancy is going to be hard because of the morning sickness. But it's going to be better when you entered second trimester. And when I entered my second trimester, the morning sickness has gone, my hormones comes back to normal, and then you know, like, it was very, very nice because I have my peer supports. You know, I have a very good lecturers.
And you're used to it, right?
Yes, I'm used to it. So it was very nice. But then when I was in my second year, if I'm not mistaken, of my Master of Clinical Psychologist, I delivered my baby. And the
second year?
It was my first few weeks of my second year. Yeah, it was very, very hard because I delivered my baby and I didn't take my confinement leave. Yeah, so I only took like 2 weeks of leave. At the same time, I'm still seeing my clients online.
Wow.
Because of the requirements, you see?
Yeah, you need to attend a class.
Yeah. So becoming a clinical psychologist, you have these requirements that you need to fulfill. You need to at least have 1,500 hours.
1,000.
You know, in order for you to apply to become a member of, clinical psychologist in Malaysia. So back to my pregnancy journey. After I delivered my baby, still I tried to be strong. You know, juggling the roles between a wife, a mother, a daughter, and a student, and a therapist for my clients. So it was very, very hard. It was a very tough one for me, right? Of course, I received a few feedback saying that my performance has declining. You know, like I should just quit. I should just take a break. Yeah, of course, it comes to me. You know, I was thinking, maybe I should just quit. Right?
Oh no.
Yeah, because again, I should take my leave. I just delivered a human being, right? I should bond with my baby. I should bond with my daughter, right? But I keep saying to myself that I can do this. I can do this. So I push myself, and Alhamdulillah, I graduated on time, and then with a good result as well. And before I finished my master, I secured my first job as a clinical psychologist 2 months
Uh-huh.
before I completed my master. Right.
I see.
But back to your question, is it tough to be a clinical psychologist? For me, it is, because I have other roles that I need to, divide myself.
Yeah.
But when you talk about handling clients, yes, it's very tough because you need to be a strong person,
Yeah.
mentally,
Mentally
physically,
strong. Yeah,
spiritually,
Yeah.
emotionally.
Overall, actually.
Yeah, because seeing clients, they trust you as a person who can listen to them,
Yeah.
who can help them.
Uh-huh.
They're very helpless.
Yeah.
And you are there sitting in front of them, like, tell me, I'm
Uh-huh.
here for you. When no one is there for you, I am here. You just have to open yourself,
Uh-huh.
right? So it's hard because sometimes, without realizing, you will bring those problems home. Like I mentioned also, limitation is very, very important as a clinical psychologist, because you have to limit yourself between your personal and your working life.
Uh-huh.
Because if you don't have that limitation, you don't have that balance, somehow you'll get burnout.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you'll get tired, and you will think that this is not a good job for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see. So, looking at your journey in becoming a clinical psychologist, right? I could see that you have been through a lot of hurdles.
Yes.
It sure is a tough journey.
Yes, it
And
is.
look at you right now. You are a clinical psychologist.
Yes.
Alhamdulillah.
Yes. Alhamdulillah.
So, all right. I could say that the most toughest part is when you had to go through online classes, right? And especially when you're becoming a clinical psychologist, you have to listen to people's problem, and to make sure that you do not merge with their problems as well. You need to have a very high coping skills, right?
Right.
Coping mechanism.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I see. All right, Sarah. How to become a clinical psychologist?
Okay.
We make it in a Malaysia perspective. Yeah.
Malaysia setting, right?
Yeah.
So, as far as I know, to become a clinical psychologist, first, the basic requirement is you have to have a master of
Yes.
clinical psychologist,
Okay.
right? And it is going to be an advantage if you have your degree in psychology, because this two knowledge is going to help you to get through that master journey. So when you have, of course, you have to apply to study in Master of Clinical Psychologist in Malaysia. The most preferred universities, as I can mention, as I believe, is UKM, Health
UKM
University.
and Health.
We have USM and UPSI. We also have Talis University, if I'm not mistaken.
Talis, yeah.
Right? But I always go for UKM lah.
UKM.
Right, of course.
UKM di hati.
UKM di hati. That one is UTITM, but yeah. So that Master of Clinical Psychology will take you 1.5 year.
1.5
2
years.
years.
Oh.
Right? Because
that's include the training,
yes,
right?
including the practicum, the
Practicum.
internal, the internship clinical, right? And also your research as well.
Research. We have to
Yes.
juggle a lot of stuff.
Yes, a
Research,
lot of stuff.
Training.
Right.
What else? Practical.
Study. We have classes as
studies.
well.
Oh
right?
my god. Do you guys have exam?
Yeah, we do have exams.
Obviously.
Yeah, obviously, will never get enough of exam. But yeah, so when you finish your 2 years of Master of Clinical Psychologist, then if you have enough hours, clinical hours, then you can apply for the membership of Malaysian Society of Clinical Psychology. So in Malaysia, we have this Malaysian Society of Clinical Psychologists, where all clinical psychologists can come into this what we call as conference or workshops, to discuss about our clinical cases, right? Not only for clinical psychologists, but when you already study the Master of Clinical Psychology, you can already apply as a student.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
see.
But also at the same time, for government servant right now, they just implemented, I think it was last year, 2022, whereby in order for you to become a licensed clinical psychologist, you need to apply for the license.
Oh, just like counselor, right?
Yes, just like counselor. So we call that as allied health practitioner. So you have to apply that, and then they will give you your license number and a certificate, meaning that you are authorized, you're a licensed clinical
Yeah.
psychologist. Yeah, so
I see.
yeah, then you can start, looking for jobs, not only in clinical settings like hospitals, centers, but you can also find in schools. You
In
see?
school.
Yeah, schools, NGOs. Do you know that Malaysia is in high demand for clinical psychologists?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they are really looking for clinical psychologists to help them with these mental health issues.
The demand is very high nowadays.
It is.
Yeah. Okay, so one last question. A little bit about your study journey. What did you learn during your master's degree?
A lot, actually.
A lot. Okay.
A lot.
Maybe you could simplify it.
Right. So I think during my master's degree of clinical psychologist, because we studied focusing on mental health disorders,
Mental health.
I would say that I learned a lot about mental health issues and how to navigate them, how to face them, and the resources. You see, when you study psychology, you can apply it to yourself as well, not only to other people but to yourself.
True.
So if you ask me what did I learn about during my master's degree, I said everything about mental health. So whether you are stressed, whether you are burnout, you are overwhelmed, or you have maybe anxiety, or I would say depression, you know what to do, right? And you know where's the resources, right? So if you don't know the resources, that's when I learned during my master's degree. Yeah. Previously, I don't know where to get help. Let's say where to get help for mental health issues. I don't know what the process looks like in hospitals. I don't know who to say, whether should I say doctor, physicians, I don't know, right? But after I study clinical psychology, I know the right process of seeing a doctor or a psychiatrist or a clinical psychologist in both private and public settings.
We also know the hierarchy or the steps. Who should we meet first, right?
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Is it correct if we have a problem, right? We first go meet a counselor first, and then followed by clinical psychologist, and lastly it's psychiatrist.
Right.
Right?
Let me just correct you there, right? Sharing from my experience, for public sector, especially for hospitals, the right way for you to see a doctor or maybe a clinical psychologist or a psychiatrist is for you to get a referral letter first.
From a physician.
Yes, from a general physician.
Yeah.
Yes, you can go to any nearby clinic to your place, and then you can tell the physician they are saying that you have this distress, you have this disturbance, or whatever symptoms that you feel that related to mental health. Tell them and ask for a referral letter, right? So with that referral letter, you can bring it to any hospitals nearby to you, any public hospitals. And of course, you have to go to the Jabatan Psychology or Jabatan Psychiatry. Okay? And from there, the nurses will do some triage to you. They will check your blood pressure, your heart rate, and everything before you can see a doctor or a psychiatry or a clinical psychologist for your therapy session. Yeah.
So that is for government sector,
Yes.
right? So what about private sector?
Okay, private sector is more simple actually, because they don't really have this kind of process, and the waiting line is not that long, right? So some private sectors, some centers, you can just walk in and you can see the counselor or the clinical psychologist straight.
Yeah.
Some of them you need to do some appointment first. And then they don't really do this triage, I would say, like checking your heart pressure and everything. And they will just, direct you to the psychiatry or the clinical psychologist.
Oh, that's how it works.
Yes.
I see. So, I think that is all for now. Thank you
Right.
so much, Sarah, for your time.
Thank you so much, Ali. I hope this is I hope this is helpful.
Yeah, it is
just
so
for us
much.
to spread awareness on mental health
Yeah.
in Malaysia, specifically.
Hopefully, inshallah.
Right, inshallah.
And maybe you have a word or two to say
Right.
to the people, to the audience.
Right. I would say that if you are in need, if you have any problems,
Yeah.
go for help. Seek help. Maybe your friends or your family members cannot help you, but you can you can come to us, right? Because mental health is a silent killer,
It
just
is.
like a heart attack is. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much again.
Thank you so much.
Alright.
Thank you.
So, if you think that this episode is beneficial to you, please do share, subscribe, and like this video so that I can produce more about psychology, mental health, and self-growth related. All right. Thank you so much. Bye, guys.